I'm going to talk about something that has come up for me, really on a regular basis, especially debating online and things like that. And it's this: I don't find evangelical biblical scholarship to be convincing because I think they bring. This is a blanket statement. Just give me a break here. I know there are always exceptions, but because they bring into the discussion certain assumptions that are non-negotiable and that I think don't really help me understand the biblical data very well. And so I don't think much of that. And because they don't have what I think are helpful assumptions or presuppositions in what they do. Now, they will respond to me, as they should, and say, hey, Ans, don't you have presuppositions or assumptions or biases or agendas or anything like that? And I say, well, yeah, I do. And I want to try to know what they are and not to let them be too terribly imposed upon the text. But we all do have assumptions. But here's my point. The fact that we all have biases and assumptions and agendas and presuppositions and all that sort of thing doesn't mean that all opinions are equally valid, because you can actually test and discern whether the assumption you're making is a good one or not. It's not just like we all have assumptions. Oh, well, I guess it's all going to be dealt with on this meta level and not looking at the details of the text. But some assumptions and presuppositions are more helpful than others. Now, I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, Pete, you've got presuppositions and assumptions that even make you say that some are better than others. Well, that's not really fair. This comes through trial and error of now almost 40 years of working with the Bible in a scholarly way, first in seminary, then graduate school, and then my career after that. And I've come to certain conclusions that certain assumptions don't work very well. One of those examples is, and I talk about this a lot, is inerrancy. The reason I'm not an inerrantist is because I don't think the data of the Bible itself will hold that up. To me, it seems more like a forced assumption to make about the text. So when someone argues from that point of view, I almost immediately tone them out. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do. I almost immediately tone them out because what they're saying is, I know where this is coming from. I know where it's going. I've been there. That's the thing. I'm not coming at this blindly. I've been there. I understand the mindset. And I just reject it because I don't think it's a good assumption to make when coming to the text. Why? Because that makes you wind up having to defend the text instead of really just trying to understand it. Because there are a lot of things in the Bible that aren't really inerrant, in my opinion. Another example, if this helps, I'm just trying to give examples here. I was speaking years ago, at least 15 years ago, at a conference, and someone didn't like what I said. Go figure, how does that even happen? And it was about the Exodus and about the problems historical with the historical problems with the Exodus, which are well known and widespread. And he said, well, I'm making an assumption. I have a presupposition that the biblical story of the Exodus is historically accurate. And we couldn't really get into it, but really what I would have wanted to say to him is that, okay, well, that's an assumption or a presupposition, as you call it, that is actually something you can deliberate about and discern whether or not it is a good assumption. And it's not a good assumption. There are a lot of reasons for not thinking that. So just because people have assumptions doesn't mean that everyone's on the same playing field. You can actually discern what those assumptions are. So the reason that I don't really camp out in engaging with evangelical scholarship for my own benefit isn't because I think they have biases and I don't. It's not because I think they have assumptions and I don't. I know that I do. The difference is that I don't find those assumptions to be helpful. And the comeback, the throwback line, as I've said, that, well, you have your assumptions too. So, well, yeah, obviously, but we can talk about those. You want to talk about assumptions? Let's talk about assumptions. Let's talk about why you hold to this, and I'll tell you why I hold to not this. And then we can have a good discussion. So just because everyone has biases doesn't mean that all of our interpretations are equally valid. They can still be argued over, debated over, and discerned which are more valuable, which are more valid, and why.